Bam! Floating baby skull to start our day today. Welcome to the hearing notes in our special senses unit. Let's get rolling. When we discuss the ear houses two senses. One is obviously hearing. We use our ears to hear. Two is equilibrium and balance. A lot of times people don't understand that equilibrium and balance are directly related to our ears and the fluid inside of our ears. Okay, vertigo is a condition where we cannot regulate the balance and we feel like we're moving all the time. If you've been in a cruise ship and you get off and you feel like you're moving, that is all inner ear matrix, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Receptors are mechanical receptors, receptors that respond to physical forces, mechanical meaning physical receptor, and different organs house receptors for each sense. The ear is divided into three areas. One, the external or the outer ear, the middle ear, which would be called the tympanic cavity, and the inner ear, which is called the bony labyrinth. We'll talk about the three bones that are involved in the ear. They're part of the 206 in the body. The thematic membrane or eardrum separates the outer and middle ear. It's a thin, translucent membrane. It's a flattened cone, and it protrudes into the middle ear. Here's a diagram of the ear that includes the outer ear, which is the auricle here. You will see that the auditory canal is located here. And then we get into the tympanic membrane or the eardrum, and then we have our bones that are located in here. So you'll see the outer, the middle, and the inner ear. That's what we're seeing here. We'll get to this diagram, put in your sketchbook momentarily. So let's delve into the parts of the ear. The outer ear is involved in hearing only. All right, that's the squishy part that we see on the out here. All it does is for hearing. The auricle, or the pinna, is the outside portion. External acoustic meatus is the auditory canal. Remember, we learned that in the skull. External auditory meatus or external acoustic meatus for the same thing. We learned the side of the skull. You can't really see it in the baby one we have here, but it's tiny. It's right here. Turn this sideways for you there. You can see that it's right there. That's where the ear would be. It's a narrow chamber in the temporal bone. It's lined with skin, and what that gland is called there, that's a wax gland. Right? And this is the actual name of earwax, carumen. So when you take a Q-tip next time, you're like, oh, look at all my carumen. You'd be like, that's an intelligent sentence. You want to use that. The middle ear is an air-filled cavity which goes to the temporal bone. Remember, you got temporal bone right here, so that's where it's kind of located. You can picture your outer ear here. That's how far back it transfers through. It's got the eardrum. It's got a bony wall with two openings to the inner ear. It's got two windows, an oval window and a round window. And you can see this if you go back through the diagram. You can see what I'm talking about when I reference these. Now, as we get into the middle ear, the tympanic cavity of the ear, there are two tubes. That's really all you have to know. I'm not going to ask you to say this tube. You can call it the auditory tube. And it connects the middle ear with the throat, which why ears, nose, throat doctors kind of all work in the same way. It allows for equalizing pressure during yawning or swallowing. All right, when you yawn, sometimes you hear your ears pop. This is the reason why. Now we've got the bones of the middle ear. All right, we've got the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The malleus is also known as the hammer, incus known as the anvil, and stapes as the stirrup. The bones are called the ossicles. All right, the ossicles of the ear. You may hear them referenced that way. This is the function of what's happening, or the pathway or flow of sound. All right, so they move in this order: the hammer to the anvil to the stirrup to the oval window of the inner ear, which will then set cochlear fluid in motion, which is ear fluid, which set that fluid in motion. That's kind of how the hearing works on the inside. This is a good short answer question right here. This is the same diagram you saw before, but now you can notice here you got the oval window that we just discussed, and then here you have the round window. And here's a tympanic membrane, the hammer, anvil, stirrup, or the malleus, incus, and stapes. It looks like a stirrup, which is why they call it that. Okay, now to the third part. The inner ear of the bony labyrinth includes sense organs for hearing and balance. It's got a maze of chambers within the temporal bone, the cochlea, vestibule, and the semicircular canals. We're really going to talk about these in the next set of notes. All right. The labyrinth is suspended by perilymph and contains endolymph. Those are fluids. Okay, so perilymph and endolymph are types of fluids that are within the membrane. So equilibrium receptors of the inner ear are called something called vestibular apparatus, and it has two functional parts. One is called static equilibrium. The other one's called dynamic. Remember, static is kind of staying still, and dynamic is moving throughout. So we're going to get to the explanation of those a little bit later on in a different set of notes.